Hey everyone, and welcome to Europa Universalis 5. So this is a sponsored video, sponsored by Paradox, just so you know. However, that will not stop me from sharing some of my opinions with you. And honestly, whether you will enjoy EU5 or not comes down largely to one thing, which is, do you enjoy learning really complex games or not? Because Europa Universalis 5 is, I think, by far the most complex grand strategy Paradox has ever made, which is going to be a very good thing for those of you who enjoy that. But I do know a lot of you who watch my videos are not hardcore grand strategy enjoyers. With that said, there are a few features in EU5 that make it a little bit easier to learn over time. However, it's still incredibly overwhelming when you first start playing it. And frankly, even 100 hours in, it's still incredibly overwhelming. But it's also an incredibly impressive game. I still haven't even scratched the surface myself, so I'll try to show you some of the basic important stuff, and we'll go from there. So when you first start the game and go to new game, you will get the option of playing with the recommended country. And that's definitely a good idea initially. It will also tell you which aspects of the game various countries will focus on the most. So you can pick one here based on what you think will enjoy the most. However, you can also just go straight to the world map and select any country you like. And you will get the tutorial one way or another that will explain some of the basics. I say some because there are a lot of basics. I don't think I've even seen all of the basics myself yet. Just the UI in this game is immense. Yeah, so here we are. The game starts on the 1st of April 1337, which is earlier than EU4 did, and it is a pretty interesting time period. Let's maybe go with Poland for no particular reason whatsoever, which at this point in time is ruled by King Kazimierz. And he has really good stats, and that's for a reason. He's the only Polish king who has the great next to his name. Obviously, he was not known as such in 1337 yet, but you get the idea. But yeah. And if you click on various countries here, every ruler will have 3 important stats here, which is administrative ability, diplomatic ability, and military ability. And it affects all kinds of things. By the way, one of the very standard features in these kinds of games at this point are nested tooltips, and you also have those here. You can lock the tooltip by just pressing the middle mouse button, or you can just wait a few seconds, but if you're impatient, you can just use middle mouse button, and you can just keep going, like so. So this is a pretty good way of learning various mechanics and UI elements, and it will take you a very long time just to learn the monster of the UI that EU5 has. Not to mention actually using it effectively. And before you actually start playing the game, you can click up here for game rules, and there are a few things you can do here. Most importantly, if you're going to pick any country, not one of the recommended ones, you should enable missions down here, just to make sure you will be able to do the tutorial, among other things. You can also change the difficulty, so you can change it to easy for your initial games. This will all disable achievements, but if you're just starting to play, you probably don't care about achievements too much. And setting the difficulty to easy will make the AI countries play less aggressively against the human player, like it says here. You can also change historical AI, which is the default, to weighted AI or even random. Historical AI will always choose historical options in dynamic historical events. But you can even allow a country change after the game has already started. Maybe you like the way your game is going, but you don't like the way your country is going, so you can just switch to a different one then. You can also change mission rewards to have rewards at the end of the mission, at the end of every task, or have no rewards whatsoever. And there are a whole bunch of other options under flavor, and of course multiplayer if you care about that kind of thing. But yeah, there are more options under flavor which you might or might not want to change here. You can change the Black Death Outbreak here, and this will be one of the very early major events that you will see. By default it's 1346, and you start in 1337. And circling back to the difficulty for a moment, there are two separate difficulty settings, one for the player and one for the AI. So we can set both to normal or easy, you can set both to hard or very hard, whatever you prefer. There is also a very easy setting, so if you just want to have a relaxed experience and learn the game with no actual real pressure from the AI or the game systems, you can just set it to very easy. And I do think this is a good idea for the purpose of actually learning the game, because like I already said at the start, this game has overwhelming number of systems. It simulates so many things, just learning the monster of the UI in EU5 will take you quite a long time, most likely. Even if you are a veteran of EU4 and other grand strategy games, but if you're not, it will likely take even longer. But of course, you can also just start playing on normal, so that you won't get used to having various bonuses. Anyway, but let's jump right in then, shall we? So when you first get into the game, depending on what kind of start you picked, with a recommended country or any country, you will either immediately get the learning walkthrough, or there will be an option to start it down here. If this option is disabled, it means you didn't enable missions. So you have to go back to game rules and enable missions. If you didn't enable them before launching the game, you can just open the menu, game rules, and enable them in here. And you can go back into the agenda by clicking right here. So the agenda will give you some historical context for the country that you picked right here. In case of Poland, one of our main early challenges will be dealing with the Teutonic Order. There are some relevant hints down here, and again, there's the walkthrough, which you can start at any moment. This will explain some of the absolute basics. It will also explain things like nested tooltips, and some of the most basic menus in the game, like for example the budget. It will explain some of the resources. It will show you things like the hints panel over here. But just to make it clear, this tutorial alone is not nearly enough to really play the game properly. It just shows you the absolute basics, again, like balance, so that you don't go bankrupt. So this brings me to a system EU5 has that will make your life a lot easier initially when you start playing, which is automation, which has its own dedicated menu right here. If you open this window, you will see all of the automation options in the game, and some of those will be very useful even much later on, like for example, automating generals and admirals replacements. This is probably a good thing to use even if you have hundreds of hours in the game, because this is mostly busy work. But, so initially when you start playing, you could automate literally everything, except for example one single area that you would like to focus on, like war. And some of these things are better to automate than others. And I'm sure you will have a lot of people telling you that there are certain things you shouldn't automate at all. But again, when you just first start playing the game, it can be a good idea to just automate mostly everything or almost everything. You could also just automate everything and let the game run, and see what happens, and just jump in when you want to. Let's just automate everything for now, like so. One of the things you should probably avoid automating are buildings, as soon as you learn some of the basics of the game, because from what I noticed, AI doesn't exactly make great decisions in the case of buildings, or some other areas as well. And you can just go back to this menu anytime you want. There's also another way to automate things, which is from this menu over here. And this menu right here is where a lot of the options hide. So this menu is a lot more complex than it might appear at first glance, because there are various sub-menus hiding in here. There are a lot of options hiding within this menu, and you will be using it a lot. But anyway, one of the ways to automate things here is right here. So if I right-click on the country tab, I can turn off automation for the country. And maybe I just want to automate the parliament, for example. I can do that by right-clicking the parliament tab. So this is a very cool system. You can automate as many things as you want or as few things as you want. You can automate just some really extremely specific things. If I turn off automation for the country, I could, for example, again, just automate the estates, and that works just fine. I can also go into the economy tab, balance tab, again, turn off balance automation, and only automate taxes for one particular estate. And this is the number one system that will allow you to learn the game a little bit easier, but it's still going to be very overwhelming, even after you get 100, 200, 300 hours. So now what I can do is just unpause, let the game run, and see what kinds of events we get over time. When you get an important event, the game will pause. With that said, another thing that you should look at when you first start a game are these notifications up top. And some of them will be more important than others. Some of them are just informational. You might or might not want to actually do anything with them. Like, for example, we can see which truces are about to expire and when. Which doesn't mean you need to take any action, it's just here to inform you that, hey, this is happening. And since we have missions enabled, we can go here and do some of those. You can also find them when you click on the government and then missions. And the learning walkthrough will also be available here. So if we go into the economy here, for example, we have a bunch of options. And if you enable the rewards, there will be various rewards in here. I do actually think that EU5 did a pretty good job at making the game more accessible to people who are not super experienced with grand strategy games and are only just starting to play. Because while it will still feel incredibly overwhelming, you can just make your life easier, you can make the game easier, so that you won't get completely wrecked when you start playing because you have no idea what you're doing. So anyway, let's say maybe we want to develop a capital economy, and we'll gain profit dividends for 20 years, which increases our trade efficiency and trade income. So we click here, we select the market for the mission. Greed, for a lack of better description, is good. Yes, indeed, it is good. And then we get this task over here. And since we automated the trade, it got fulfilled pretty much instantly in this case. And now when we go back into missions, there is a whole tree over here that you will have to finish. So for the next task, we need to grant some privileges to one of the estates. They need to have 7 or more. At least one of these things under this node has to be true. So if you go here and we take a look into country and then estates, we can see that they currently have 5. So we would need to get this to 6. Or 7 rather. So they would need 2 more privileges. Now the thing is, it's very easy to grant privileges, but revoking them is another story. So for example, if we try to revoke this privilege right here, we will get minus 40% estate satisfaction and we will lose stability. And stability, if you played any other Paradox game in the past, is one of the most important things in the whole game for you. Right now we are at 29 stability and we're actually losing some. Stability is incredibly important. Having said that, we can grant them some privileges. So we can grant them building roads rights. And for the 7th one, we could allow trade center sponsorship. So that will be 7. And that will complete the task. There you go. The task has been fulfilled. Now we can go back into missions. And then we need to grow them. So we need at least 3,250 in Krakow. And you do get some hints down here what you can do. So you can go to a location you chose for the mission and get some relevant buildings done. So in this case, what we can do is go to Production tab, open Buildings, and then we can turn off automation for buildings. We can search for Krakow specifically, right here, and then we can filter them by relevant estate right here. So this will only show buildings that can employ burghers. And if we scroll down, we could build, for example, a market warehouse. And these are the effects it will have. And you can see up here how it will affect the employment. It needs 250 to function properly. And obviously, like, what to build, where and why is a whole different thing. But right now, I'm mostly focusing on how and where to get things done. And this is the learning cliff. How to do something is one thing. Why and where is a whole different thing. Alright, let's say we'll build a market warehouse. That will take 238 days. So let's just unpause and let the game run for a bit. And we'll see what happens. And a whole bunch of things will obviously start happening. I will not be going into every single one because it will definitely feel overwhelming, the amount of things that you'll have to deal with. Having said that, let's slow down a little bit. There's another very important aspect of Europa Universalis, and really any Paradox game, which are map modes, which in this case are hidden in this menu down here. So if you expand this menu at the bottom, you will see a whole bunch of different map modes, and there are actually a lot of them. The main ones are basically down here. There's also a neat keyboard shortcut, which is Ctrl-Q, which allows you to go back to the default terrain map mode, which in this case is right here. And here's an event that actually requires our input, even if you automated everything, and the game will pause until you make an actual decision on this. And in this case, you have a pact with Hungary made in 1335, and this asks you whether you want to honor it or not. If you choose not to, you will lose 50 opinion with the Kingdom of Hungary, and the Kingdom of Hungary will lose 50 opinion with you. And if you do honor it, you will gain opinion. However, you will also change the succession law to Union of Crown succession. And as mentioned earlier, this is where nested tooltips really come in. You can just check explanation of any of these things here, which certainly helps learn the game over time. The other effect here is that both countries will be called to each other's defense if attacked, and the relationship will end if war breaks out between you. It also disallows war declarations between you, but war can break out through other means. Anyway, we will honor the agreement. There's also another way of quickly accessing information and various menus, which you will likely end up using a lot, which is the context menu with the right click. So, for example, if I wanted to check the population in Krakow, I don't have to left click on Krakow and look for things here, which you might not even be able to find quickly initially. What I can do instead is right click and then go population, and this will show me the population. We can see we have 3,050 burghers at the moment, 3,600 laborers, 32,000 peasants, 1,250 soldiers, and so on. Another important thing you can do is pin things, like this. So this way we can pin the location. And obviously we can unpin it as well. This is the outliner, and you are probably very familiar with it if you played pretty much any other Paradox game. If you're not, this is basically a way of pinning important information that you want to keep an eye on. And you can pin pretty much anything you want here. Yeah, here we can see we got an outbreak in Krakow, which is obviously not good for us, and it will decrease prosperity by 30%. And as mentioned earlier, you will get the Black Plague pretty early into the game. You don't have a whole lot of time before that happens. And it's a major event that will happen. Here's another event you're going to get as Poland or the Teutons. This is a response to a complaint filed against the Teutons to the Papal Court, and they ruled that they need to return several provinces to Poland. And here's their response: they decided to file an appeal, and you lose 10 prestige. So now we're actually down to 5 prestige, which is not a whole lot. However, as a result, we have now gained a casus belli on the Teutons for the next 15 years. So we can use this to go to war with them, if we so desire. So now, if I wanted to take advantage of this, one way to do that is to just zoom out to see them easier. Right-click on the Teutonic Order, declare war, and then you'll have the option down here to use the claims you have right here. Take this particular province, and then you can declare war if you want. However, if I do declare war right now, I will break a truce I have with them. So while I could do that, it would not be a particularly good idea. We would get plus 25 antagonism, and this will affect other countries' opinion of us. So we will wait. This also gives you an option of whether you want to call your allies to war or not. In this case, Hungary. Anyway, the task has been fulfilled. And now we have the next one, embracing the capital economy. And we can see it will be completed basically next year, exactly a year from now, on May the 15th, 1340. And this one mostly just involves waiting. And here's an event we got because we're embracing capital economy. There is some resistance, and there's a decision to be made. We can continue our progress unhindered, but we will lose some pop satisfaction. And we won't be able to employ as many people in the salt fields. Some friction is expected. So now we have an option to intervene in a war against Austria. Let's just do that real quick. And then, because we got everything automated, if I unpause right now, because now we're at war, the AI will raise the troops for us. And I mean, you can just do it yourself under military and raise levies. Right now there are no locations available for recruiting because they have already been recruited. And if we go into a map mode, down here, and we switch to diplomatic map mode, we can see who we're at war with, right here. In this case, obviously Austria. And we could send our troops, we don't have to, but we definitely could. First, let's actually merge them. And by the way, if you automate everything, there are definitely some questionable decisions the AI will make. So once you learn the game better, you should just take over those areas of the game yourself. But initially, it's better if the AI makes questionable decisions than you don't make any, because you don't even know you were supposed to make any. Anyway, now we can merge these units to the strongest unit, and we'll get one army. And we're leading it ourselves in this case. And again, I can just switch this if I want to, by removing myself as the general, but this is fine. So we can move over to Austria. We're also about to finish embracing capital economy in 10 days. And by the way, in EU5, your army consists of actual people. So if they die in combat, well, that's actual farmers somewhere who died. Or some other types of pops in this case. So it will have an actual really impact on your economy once the war is over, or even before it's over. Anyway, we have embraced capital economy. Also, another very important thing for your armies is actual supply. We can see over here that we have 1 month of food capacity in our army. And the supply is very much a thing here. You can get more food in friendly territory. In this case, we are not able to get food here, obviously, because this is foreign land, hostile foreign land that we're at war with. Yeah, speaking of potentially questionable decisions UI can make, we have now formed a union, which as a player controlling everything, you might or might not want to do in this case. But yeah, we are now in a union with these guys. And we have also finished our occupation of the province. I have also picked manufactory focus in the mission tree, so now we can see there's a lot of extra stuff to do in here. There is a lot to do in this game, which brings me back to my earlier point about things being absolutely overwhelming when you first start playing. Even once you clock 50, 100, 200 hours, it will almost certainly still be overwhelming at some points. Now we can send our army to keep occupying more territories. And these will be relatively quick to occupy because there are no fortifications in here. If we want to siege actual fortifications, this takes significantly longer. However, we also now see a notification that our army has a serious lack of food and will suffer attrition. So in this case, we should probably go back into friendly territory and get some food back. Otherwise, they will start starving. And you don't want your army to starve. So we can go back into Hungarian territory, because they are our allies, and we will be able to get our food back. So now we can go back to sieging. And we can also see that we already have a plus 19% in the war against Austria, the war score that is. And yeah, now we can see that again we have 1 month of food capacity right now. We can see our monthly consumption, what is coming from. I also don't actually have to fight here. I can just go back into my territory, disband the levies, and let my allies handle their own war. Because this is not my war, I just intervened to show you some of the basic mechanics. Anyway, I think I'm going to stop here, because I could probably easily make this video 10 hours long, but hopefully I managed to show you how you can even begin to handle Europa Universalis 5, and hopefully you got a decent idea of whether this is even your kind of thing to begin with. So thanks for watching all the way to the end, I appreciate it. Leave a like if you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.